So I've been hearing some version of the same question lately. That question goes something like, what stays human when machines can do most of the work? And I've been thinking about this for quite some time. I've been talking to my peers, talking to founders, investors, operators, writers, talking to people who are building the AI, and talking to people whose jobs are impacted by the AI. And I want to share a frame of thinking that I keep coming back to, one that I think keeps up with the technological progress that's happening. So here's a working theory, as Lauren mentioned, for your consideration. So among other things, I am a writer, and that means that I spend a lot of my writing time trying to deliver something novel, and then trying to sound like myself, whatever that may mean. Interestingly, I have noticed more recently that I've been trying to sound a bit more like a human first. That's a bit confusing to kind of conceptualize, but let me tell you why. So I've been writing about 100 essays I've written over the past 5 years, and in that same time frame, AI, of course, has learned how to write and talk like us as well. Now, first, when AI started writing, I was genuinely not bothered. I thought, this is great. Show me more. Let's see what you can do. Slowly, and then somewhat suddenly, I started being a little bit frustrated by it, because the first thing it took away from me was the ability to use em-dashes, a punctuation that is very near and dear to my heart, and frankly, to many writers' hearts. At first, I protested. I said, I'm going to use them anyway, because I like em-dashes. And then a couple of weeks later, I was writing an essay, and I found myself putting a disclaimer in the top, something to the effect of, all em-dashes in this piece were human inserted. Okay, and it didn't stop there. Then we quickly lost the word delve, lost away to the LLMs. People say nobody used it. I liked the word delve. The sentence structure contrastive negation that everybody's probably familiar with, it's not X, it's Y, quickly became the tell of AI writing. So one by one, all of these elegant, assertive phrases and punctuation styles and sentence structures were lost to AI. And if you manage to kind of sidestep all of these specific traps, there are broader, more all-encompassing tells that you want to avoid too. Things like editing that's too clean, writing that is too factual, sentence lengths that are too similar. So we find ourselves in a situation where the tidier the prose, the more suspicious the readers have become. And the more sophisticated the machines get at writing and talking like us, the more we have to keep mutating ourselves to seem human. So what is the solution to this? So far, it seems like many of my friends that are writers and myself think the solution is just to get messier. What does that mean? It means including eclectic asides that we normally wouldn't have included in our writing. It means breaking the fourth wall more often, just speaking directly to the reader and going out of voice. It means like leaving a lot more things and interesting stories in that I otherwise would have cut in the editing process. In short, it kind of just means like making your voice voicier, whatever that means to you. So we find ourselves in a situation where good and clean is now bad, and raw and unpredictable is aspirational. And this is what every writer I know is going through, navigating, trying to sound like themselves, sound like a human, which is now a moving target, and then, of course, do the thing we want to do, which is say something novel and useful for people to read. So it's no surprise, probably, then, that more than ever, I'm finding myself wondering, what is humanity even? Kevin Kelly, who you all may know is Wired's founding editor and who I consider to be a prolific futurist, recently wrote about what he calls the age of ambiguity. He says that we're entering this period in which the defining condition of the period is uncertainty. So we're uncertain about what technology is going to do, we're uncertain about geopolitics, we're uncertain about jobs, we're uncertain about what's fake and what's real online anymore. And I think one of the most interesting uncertainties is our definition of what is human and how we relate to that, not only in life, but in our work. In many ways, it looks like technology has moved upstream of culture. I like Stuart Brand's pace layers, if any of you know his really great diagram. But AI is a super technology that's basically hitting all of the layers at once. It's hitting fashion, it's hitting commerce, it's hitting government, it's hitting infrastructure, it's even hitting culture, and probably pretty soon, if not already, nature. Culture and nature are things that we are so used to moving at a very slow pace, such that we can adapt to it. Now that technology has moved upstream of culture, we're struggling to keep up with that pace. It's not natural to us. And it affects not only how we relate to ourselves, but also, of course, to our work. In this negotiation of what's left for humans when machines can do so much of the work, I think where we find ourselves is figuring out how to separate the useful from what is specific to you or what is ours. AI is basically forcing all of us to separate out the utility of our work from what is embedded deeply in us as people or our personhood. In the past, you might have said just producing something, lending your labor to something, was itself a human quality. Now that's no longer the case. The labor doesn't mean much, whether it's physical labor or even knowledge work or intellectual labor. Now it's very much tied up in what can we do that the other machines can't do. So all that is to say, what is the fate of our skills in the age of machine intelligence? And I think an interesting question, which obsolescences will we accept and which won't we accept? I think that's a big tension that's happening right now as well. For example, calligraphy was once useful. Now it is just an art. Driving for many decades has been useful. Pretty soon, I think it'll be much more like riding a horse, something that we do for fun or for sport. And so I think history is quite informative in this way. How we react to new technologies taking over skills or roles that we previously considered to be human is, I think, indicative of how we probably will react in the future to something similar. So I want to talk about two specific ways that we're reacting that I think are really important going forward. So the first, when machines beat us at sport, after the initial shock, of course, we really don't seem to mind. Very famously, IBM's Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov, I think some 30 years ago at chess. And we still see chess champions as superhuman. Arguably, it is maybe as popular as it has ever been. Last month, a humanoid robot actually beat the half marathon record that a human held, and I think ran a half marathon in 50 minutes, which is 7 minutes faster than a human. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we were all very excited that a human beat the record for a marathon, coming in just under 2 hours. So my point being, we don't marvel the same at a mathematically perfect game or the fastest recorded time when it is not accomplished by a human. We want the drama, okay? We want to see ourselves testing human limits, and we want to also know the people behind these feats. The second, I think, that is quite informative. When machines make art, and when we know that the author of this art is AI or some technology, our instinct is to reject it or at least other it, call it something else. So, I do think that AI can create something intricate, something beautiful, something moving, but can it really make art as we know it? That is a question that we're grappling with. The examples of this that I'm seeing, of course, as a writer, is that there are AI detectors proliferating everywhere. So any published work that you see online, whether it's on Substack or Medium or Twitter or what have you, is quickly followed up by somebody eager in the audience to test if it is AI or not. They want to be the arbiters of whether this is art or it is relegated to slop. The other example, AI is entering the Hollywood discourse. The Oscars just announced that acting performances and screenwriting will only be awarded to humans who are creating them. So this battle is going on in all of the artistic realms that we previously considered to be somewhat sacrosanct. My point being, we accept there will be new kinds of art, but we still want to preserve the humankind. Now, art and sport might seem rather distinct, but I think they share a lot in common. For one, they both require mastery and ingenuity. Two, they both have stakes. So when we create art and put it out into the world, or when we play a sport, we make ourselves vulnerable. We make ourselves vulnerable to being misunderstood, to being perceived to be not good enough, to failing some benchmark that is set for us. And third, both art and sport put a very specific person at the center. The human is the story, and we care about that story because that's how we identify with the struggle, and that's how we identify with the triumph. Pixar, the animation studio, has these somewhat famous rules of storytelling. There's 22 of them. The first one is my favorite, and it roughly goes like this. You admire a character more for trying than for their successes. And I think that's very true to what we're dealing with right now. So, what does it mean that we have so much appreciation for sport and art when it comes to the question that I initially posed? What stays human when machines can do most of the work? Well, I would argue that every skill on some level, on a long enough horizon, is moving towards one of three fates: art, sport, or extinction. And extinction sounds a little bit alarming, but what I mean by that simply is that humans in the future won't consider that skill something to be deeply human, that humans need to learn. That skill will by default be something relegated to machines. So my provocation is that once AI surpasses humans at any given skill, and this is obviously happening in every domain right now, the only way to save that skill and to make it worthwhile saving is to find the art or find the sport in it. This is, of course, in the long term. Now, in the short term, where most of us probably are right now, we're in the process of unbundling our roles, our work, and understanding what is it that's unique to us, that's specific to us, as I mentioned, versus just useful, something that somebody else could do, something that could be automated away. And I think we're all kind of stewarding our own obsolescence right now. We're being quality control for the things that are taking some parts of our job. So engineers are now reviewing AI code. Junior lawyers, I'm sure, are starting to redline contracts that are created by AI. Radiologists are approving AI red scans. So the list goes on. We're stewards of the things that are replacing us to some extent, and we're trying to figure out what part are we still going to keep doing. I'm certainly not a pessimist, so I know and believe there is more for us to do, but it's still a hard question for us to tackle. I don't think it's any coincidence that the intersection of art and sport is the essence of entrepreneurship. Building a company demands equal measures of both, of art and sport. The art is very much wrapped in the founder's vision, what they choose to build, what they choose not to build, how they choose to build it, and how they go about it. The company itself is the artifact, it's the art. The sport is the building of it. And I know many different types of entrepreneurs. Some of them are much more like athletes. They're in it for the love of the game. And some of them are much more like artists. They're in it for the love of the craft or the vision they're trying to bring to life. So I don't think it's any coincidence that those two things are the things that are prized in entrepreneurship. And that's probably something that we're all involved in or near here. Okay, so now this has all been a bit conceptual. We can bring it down to the level of our work too. So you might be a CEO, a founder, an executive, an engineer, a writer, an operator, whatever you do. There are probably parts of your job that historically have felt like things that maybe other people could do. Maybe they're still experts, so there's something that you're uniquely doing, but you're not the only one who can do this thing. And then there probably were some parts of your job that really, truly only you uniquely could do. Maybe this took up a minority of your time, is what I suspect. And so I think the old paradigm is something like an 80-20, doing 80% useful things and 20% uniquely you things. And I think the future looks the other way. It looks more like doing 20% useful things, as we historically have known it, and 80% things that only you could potentially do. And I think that flip is very freeing, but probably also a little bit frightening. I think in the age of ambiguity, it's pretty useful to collapse things down to simplicity. Machine versus human. That's what we're talking about. And on the human side, more than ever, I think we need artists and we need athletes. Artists are the people who want to make something beautiful, something majestic, something moving. And as I said, they often want to make it for its own sake. And the vision is realized when it looks exactly like the thing they had in their head. Athletes want to win. They want to beat a record. They want to do something unique, and they want to find a creative way to get there. And they want to push themselves to the limit. In the past, I think we would look at an organization and the number of employees and see that as a measure of maybe impressiveness or productivity or something to really be lauded. That's really not the case anymore because AI is giving people leverage. So the count of employees is much less important. I think in the future, what's going to be far more interesting is to look at your organization and consider how many artists do we have? How many athletes do we have? What are they providing that maybe 10 or 20 or 100 employees previously couldn't have provided? So I think there's an audit we all kind of have to do, both in ourselves and also in the organizations that we're involved in. So how do we actually surface or increase the artistry and athleticism in ourselves? One way I think about this is figuring out where you thrive in ambiguity. So not everybody thrives in ambiguity in every domain, but one thing I have certainly seen is that both artists and athletes thrive in ambiguity. Artists in particular hold ambiguity in their work. So it's very often that I don't even really know what argument I'm making until the third draft of something that I'm writing. Athletes often hold and deal with ambiguity outside of their process. Maybe they don't know what the conditions are going to be outside on the day that they're going to race the half marathon or the marathon, but they deal with it. Maybe they don't know what their competitor is going to throw at them that day, but they deal with it. So I think looking at where you thrive in ambiguity is a helpful way to think about where you might have some artistry or some athleticism hiding. The companies that get this right, to think about that for a second, I think will not only recruit artists and athletes, but they will also build the conditions to unlock them in-house. It's very hard to do this, I think, from where we have been to where we are going, but I also think quite important. How do you do that? I think for one, knowing that standardization leads you to getting average output from many people, but it makes it nearly impossible to get exceptional output from specific people. So moving away from standardization and treating people as specific people as opposed to interchangeable ones. And that means a whole lot of things for how organizations are organized and how we think about what productivity is and how we think about performance. But I think it's a necessary thing to look at. Okay, so what does this all kind of add up to? If we come back to the existential questions, the first question being, what can humans uniquely do? And the second, I think equally important, what do we still want humans to do? I would contend that the answer to those two questions is maybe similar or the same. It boils down to art and sport. What can only humans do? Art and sport. What do we still want humans to do? Art and sport. Everything else is on the margins, something that we're thinking about how to automate away in some capacity. So throughout this talk, I've gestured at kind of what artists and athletes have or what words kind of embody them. And I think this is something that many people in the broader tech community have been trying to figure out, just not in the frame of artists and athletes. So we've heard about taste. I wrote an essay about taste a few years ago myself. We've heard about grit. We have heard about care, craft, story, purpose, meaning, and the list goes on. I'm sure there would be 10 more words that we could come up with and we would all be familiar with. I think that one word that hasn't shown up that much, and not to just whip out the dictionary again, but is the word soul. And I'm willing to bet, I like to make predictions, I'm willing to bet that we're going to see much more of this word coming soon. And the reason for that is it probably most quintessentially summarizes the thing that machines don't have, or at least so far, we're pretty certain they don't have. All right, so you could read all of this cynically. You could say that, hey, art and sport are pretty far from my kind of work, or maybe you're just talking about pure artists and athletes, and there's just an elite few of those, and that doesn't really apply to me. You could say soul is a soft word for this like hard problem that we're tackling, and that, hey, nothing really has changed. We're just in this accelerating capitalist society where wealth inequality is increasing. Why are you talking about artists and athletes? I don't think that's the case, at least personally. I think that the important thing that I come out of this with is that we have always wanted our work to matter, and we have always wanted to be a specific person that created a specific thing. And that's the only way that newness actually is created. And newness is the very lifeblood, at least in the entrepreneurial circles that I tend to be in, that creates greatness or has an opportunity to create greatness. And I'm firmly of the opinion that the abundance of the universe that we're all so hopeful for can only come about by unlocking what is specific to each of us, not just by the biggest labs getting bigger and just by the biggest products getting more users. So I think we're kind of being forced to reveal our hand, no pun intended. What we value from humans or in humans is something that we are being forced to answer for now simply because the machines are forcing us to do it. I think artists and athletes are the embodiment of what that is. Now, you can take that literally, as in art and sport as we've known it in leisure and entertainment, or you can take it somewhat more metaphorically, as in the art and sport of the unautomatable, uniquely human work that we will be able to do in whatever domain we're in going forward. I think both of those are quite compelling and where I expect a lot of our energies to go in the future. Because I do think from here on out, the work that matters is going to be only the work that we as individuals could have done.